Hi, I'm Marty Gilbert, and welcome to another one of NSE&G's LinkedIn Lives. This particular event is going to be dedicated to a Q&A session. So at any point in time, you can chat in a question. I've already received a number by email already, but the one request that I do have is that if you do have a question, please, in the chat, put in all caps the word question followed by your question, and make it as short and as simple as possible, so that I know that some of you are going to be networking with one another, and you want to make more connections. So I want to be able to differentiate those questions from other conversations that might be going on in the chat. So before I get started, let me just share with you a couple quick things. Some of you may be familiar with NSE&G, and there may be some folks that you have joined us today for the very first time. Our website is nsenginc.com. It stands for the North Shore Executive Networking Group. This entire organization is the largest job search group in the United States. We've got over 11,000 members. The membership is absolutely free. And with that membership, you're going to get access to 2 webinar recordings from me on how to shorten your job search. And then separately from that was a Q&A session that I did about a year ago and fielded questions from across the country. But there's great resources within the environment. We've got, in fact, I'm going to cover a few of them with you right now. One is we've got a separate LinkedIn group. So I urge you to join the group by joining, the group on the website. But separate and apart from that, you can join our NSE&G LinkedIn group. And there's a lot of activity going on there. We've got a safe place where you can ask questions of other people. We've got 3,000 of our 11,000 members that have landed jobs, and they are participating in this as well. So please don't hesitate to make use of this valuable tool. Another is that I've got 17 on-demand webinar recordings on all different aspects of job search, from age discrimination to how to beat the applicant tracking systems, resumes, LinkedIn profiles, elevator pitch, and things like that. So please don't hesitate to take a look at it. You'll find it up on the website. And all of these recordings are about 90 minutes in length. In addition to that, I've got 3-hour workshop recordings. I've got 3 of them. The first one is on my trademarked What the Hell approach to job search. And this is a very novel way of going about your job search. It's a big part of the coaching methodology that I share with people, because the premise is, what the hell do you have to lose by doing things that other job seekers aren't doing? One of the keys to an effective job search is you got to stand out. You got to get visibility. And those are the kinds of things that get you credibility, which ultimately leads to interviews. So it's a very engaging session. The second 3-hour workshop is on how to maximize the value of LinkedIn. And in this session, I spend the first half on how to search engine optimize your profile so you get more profile views. And in the second half, I show you how to use the platform and some of the hidden features that a lot of people don't know about. The third one is how to create an effective job search plan. This is no different than any job you've ever had. Maybe for some of you, the most difficult job you've ever had. But just like anything, you've got to set goals for yourself, and you got to be able to prioritize your time, because time management is an awfully big part of an effective job search. The biggest part of what I do in NSE&G is job search coaching. I've got 2 different ways in which I work with folks. I've got job search coaching packages, and you can take a look at them on the website. And I do one-on-one custom coaching that I can tailor to whatever your needs might be, whether it's resumes, LinkedIn profiles, cover letters, interviewing, any number of things. And if this is something that you feel is of interest to you, please feel free to email me at mgilbert@nsenginc.com, and we can have a free exploratory conversation. If you'd like to get information from me on a fairly regular basis, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I've got about 30,000 LinkedIn connections, but I do post a lot of things each week that are sharing my perspectives on job search. And so if you want to be notified when I do post something, just go to my profile, click on the bell, and you will be then alerted every time I put something out there. Our next event after today is going to be in 3 weeks. And I'm going to be making a presentation on 6 job search game changers. These are specific things that are a little bit unusual, or might be things that can help draw more attention to you that a lot of people aren't aware of. And so I'm going to dig deeply into each one of these 6 and share them with you. Again, it'd be the same process of registering. And of course, just like this event, the live event gets recorded by LinkedIn. So even if you can't make the live event, today or in 3 weeks, you'll be able to get access to the recording by just simply going back to the registration link. One final thing I want to mention is that the US government actually sets aside a very sizable chunk of money for job seekers to get training for free. This is important. And the program is called the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. It's federally funded, and I have a partnership with a company here in the state of Illinois by the name of Microtrain, who can deliver this training to you for free. Now, they are not the only company that does this. Every state has multiple companies that are WIOA training approved. The way that it works is that you can go, for example, to Microtrain's website and take a look at the different training programs that they have, and they will work with you on applying for a grant. When you receive that grant, it might be for $5,000. It could be for as much as $10,000 that can be used toward free training, because Microtrain is going to get paid by the government, which means they can pass along the training programs or certifications to you at absolutely no cost. This is really important, and there's some great programs. This particular company offers a lot of great technical training, Lean Six Sigma, ChatGPT that I'm sure a lot of you have been tinkering with, agile business processes and whatnot. So if you do happen to live in the state of Illinois, because each training company is licensed for a particular geographic area, please don't hesitate to look at our landing page at microtrain.net/NSENG. This has been set up specifically for anybody who's an NSENG member. And if you want, you can reach out to Dennis Muller at dmuller@microtrain.net and hear more about this. So this is your opportunity to ask questions. And I do have to say that I got quite a few that were emailed into me in advance. I'm going to probably start with those, but by all means, feel free to chat in a question at any point in time. I just ask again, put the word question in front of your question so that it's real clear to me that this is a question being asked, and then try to be as brief with the question that you described. So here's one of the questions that was sent in to me several days ago. It goes like this. After 4 years, I'm back in the market looking for my next opportunity. And at the time that I was looking last, it was suggested to me that a way to get around the applicant tracking system is to write in any missing keywords in white, in 1-point font, in between 2 sections of a resume. Is this still the case? I've looked actually into this fairly significantly, because there are a lot of people, and just so that for everybody, if you don't understand why somebody might want to put white type onto a resume, it becomes invisible, right? But could it be picked up by an applicant tracking system, which is really nothing more than a piece of software that is going to enable you to get more keywords in your background relative to what the applicant tracking system is looking for? It's a scanner of sorts. The ATSs today have gotten more sophisticated. And if you think you're going to trick the ATS by putting some keywords throughout your resume in white so that they aren't visible, but they will be picked up, they will, in fact, in many cases, many ATSs will pick them up, but they will not necessarily look at them positively. Because it borders on unethical approach to a job search, and there are definitely companies who would frown on people who are just trying to get more and more keywords loaded into their resume without having to crowd it out. So if any of you are familiar with this approach, I don't advise doing it, because I think there's potentially tremendous downside. Here's another question that came in. I'm looking for full-time work or a long-time contract as a marketing content creator. I don't have a lot of samples of the work that I've done, and I don't have many metrics to measure the value and the difference that I made. For somebody in a role like that, is there anything you can suggest to help me enhance my resume? Well, I'm going to suggest a couple things. Think about, while you might not have the exact metrics that indicate the measurable difference that you made during your search, what I would suggest is that you take a look at the accomplishments that you've had in your background, and I think you've got to indicate, what, I've made very significant differences. It might be with regard to cost reduction. It might be helping to grow the top line. It might be helping to grow profitability. It might be increasing web traffic. It might be increasing leads. But just because you don't have the exact number or the exact percentage doesn't mean you can't include it. You absolutely should. If you have a best estimate of what the impact might be, that might be acceptable as well. But don't ignore the impact that you have just because you just don't have the numbers to support it. So I encourage you to do that. And there's so many different things, particularly for marketing people, to talk about the before and after picture in their backgrounds. And so I urge you to don't omit it. So here's a question that was chatted in. Are there any strategies or recommendations on how best to deal with apparent age discrimination? Yeah, I've got about 25 of them in my recording. Let me just share a couple real quick ones with you, because I know there are many of you that might be over the age of 45 or 50 and maybe have been experiencing some ageism, and it does happen, and companies can get away with it because you're not an employee. So one thing I urge everybody to do, particularly if you're over the age of 50, is get a hold of a millennial. Talk to a millennial. Find out if they've ever hired or interviewed somebody who's older and get their impressions. Because for many of you, it's quite possible if you might be 55 working for somebody who's 35 or 40. It happens. But you want to understand things from their side, from their vantage point, because their vote is oftentimes going to weigh pretty heavily. And it's not unusual for somebody much younger to be managing somebody who might have a number of years over them. At the same time, you want to make sure that don't make silly mistakes like putting in your graduation date from university or grad school. You want to make sure that you can demonstrate that you've kept current with technology. Now, I remember there was one individual in the group who actually would take an iPad with them to a meeting. They didn't know how to operate it, but they just left it there with them to indicate, hey, I'm keeping current. Okay, don't be afraid to talk about training that you may have gone through. But one of the stereotypes associated with folks that are older is that they have not, kept up with the technology, and so that's something that you're going to want to deal with and be able to, to find ways to demonstrate that you're not one of these folks that have fallen behind. So let's say here's a question that was sent in. It says, please post the federal government's program that pays for training. Again, I'm gonna mention this one more time here. The program is called WIOA, WIOA. It stands for Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and the company that I partner with here for anybody in the state of Illinois is Microtrain, microtrain.net. Okay. Here's another question that was emailed in. I'm attempting to transition from marketing to an executive assistant role or a senior admin role. Third-party recruiters tell me that my experience in being an executive assistant was too long ago. Okay, so this person has been spending their time in marketing, and it was many years ago that they were an executive assistant. How do I convince these external recruiters that this is something that I want to do and that I'm not overqualified? So this is a tough one, and it's a little unusual, but the fact is that if I'm reading your question right, you're saying you're hearing this from external recruiters. So one piece of advice I have is you want to go directly to hiring managers and people that are in the sphere of influence. Okay, external recruiters are good in that if they are a retained search firm. Okay, but none of the retained search firms are going to be hired for an executive assistant type of role. They're going to be hired for the more senior roles. So my feeling is put together a hit list of companies. Okay, it might be 20, it might be 220. Where are the industries where you bring experience? Put together that list of companies that fall in those industries and go after them. Doesn't matter whether or not they have a job. Okay, and this is a big mistake that a lot of job seekers make. They think the only good use of time is to go after companies that have advertised jobs, and it's absolutely not the case. Now, your odds might be 100 to 1, and that's a true fact. But there's always a good opportunity out there that hasn't yet made it out online. It's not sitting on LinkedIn or Indeed or Career Builder. And there are many things that people that are doing in the way of using their own employees to make internal recommendations. This is the reason why networking is so important to any effective job search. You've got to get visibility for yourself through people that can potentially make an introduction. So my advice to you, while it may be difficult for you to explain this to a third-party recruiter, I think if you put together a great email cover letter that explains why you want to be making this change from where you were, a long time ago back there, I would recommend that you be able to put together a strong email cover letter that shows them, with me as an executive assistant, you get a whole lot more than just your typical admin. So you're going to bring marketing background, you know and understand probably online activities and other things like this. This is how you can differentiate yourself versus others. But I would express that through an email cover letter and follow up with all the people you send it to, because you're probably going to send this to about 3, 4, 5 different people inside each of the target companies that are within the industries where you bring experience. If you're an admin that brings industry knowledge, boy, it really can set you apart from everybody else. Here's a question. Let me see if there's another question that came in here from. Here's a question. It says, for initial outreach, does it make the most sense to send a LinkedIn message or send a direct email to the hiring manager? My personal feeling is sending a direct email to the hiring manager and other people that are likely to be a part of the hiring process is the most effective way to go. The fact is, you can find most people's email addresses. Now, we do know that about 95% of all the email addresses in the United States are one of 2 formats. It's either jsmith@abc.com or john.smith@abc.com. But you can go to a website like hunter.io, hunter.io, and you can plug in the name of a company, and it will show you examples of people's email addresses. So you want to get it into their inbox. And when you start to get email introducing yourself directly to people at their place of work, it's going to get a lot more visibility than if you do it as an in-mail. So my feeling is identify the key people inside that firm that is of interest to you, whether they have a job or don't have a job. Get it to multiple folks. And from that point, if you're sending it to somebody who's clearly not the hiring manager, there's a good chance that they're going to send it over to the person who is. So this is one way you get a lot more visibility. It's also one of the moves associated with my What the Hell approach to job search. All right, so here's another question that came in. How do we make ourselves more visible, make ourselves top of mind with recruiters? Okay, I'm going to just take a minute to explain that you've got really 3 different types of recruiters. There are internal recruiters who are employees of the company. And there are 2 types of external recruiters. There are retained search firms and there are contingent search firms. Retained search firms are companies that some of you may be familiar with, people like Spencer Stuart, Korn Ferry, Heidrick & Struggles, Russell Reynolds. These are all top-notch firms, and they're going after, most of the time, VP and C-level positions to fill for a company, and they have been given the exclusive for that. But I think, again, I would say the same thing here. The better use of time is to go after the people that own the budget, that have the influence, and the people that can make decisions. And that will be the case, with an external recruiter who's a retained search firm. They have a lot more influence and power than somebody who's an internal recruiter. But if it's a specific company that you're familiar with, and you can find the people on LinkedIn that are likely to be weighing in on a potential hiring decision, I think your best bet is always to get that email off to them. And get them, knowing what it is that you can do. Here's another question that was chatted in. What are your thoughts on the Open to Work banner, the pros and cons? This question comes up a lot. I've got a very specific feeling about it. I don't think it's beneficial. In fact, I recommend to all of the clients that I coach that if they do have that hashtag open to work banner that sits on your photograph, to get rid of it. Here's my thinking. I think, for some people, well, let me just start off by saying that I've hired a lot of people during my career, and I know a lot of people that have hired a lot of folks. I cannot find one single person who ever was instructed by their company that when you fill this next position, please make sure that it's somebody who's currently unemployed. But I can tell you, there are search firms that are told by their clients, the hiring companies, that, you know what, I want you to bring me, 4 or 5 really qualified candidates, but make sure that not more than one of them is currently unemployed. So there is, for some companies, some built-in prejudice against people who are currently open to work. So my feeling, and I also think, there are some people that view it as a desperate move. So my general attitude toward this is it's not adding value to you. It's not, nobody's going to go out of their way to hire you because you are currently open to work. They're looking for the best candidate that they can afford to hire. So I wouldn't bring any unnecessary attention right to your profile photo by putting that hashtag open to work banner in there. Here's a question that was sent in regard to, tell me about yourself. What is the ideal length this should be? Is this less than a minute, or is that too short? Okay, so a lot of you probably have come across in job interviews or in networking meetings where one of the first questions that you're asked coming out of the blocks is, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself? It's a very reasonable question, and it's one that you absolutely need to be prepared for, because it will get your interaction off to a great start. My feeling is you should be able in about 60 seconds to explain who you are and what you stand for and what kind of value you bring. Now, I know that 60 seconds is not a lot of time, but the exercise that I would like each of you to go through is create a message map. Think of like an organizational chart. And at the top of the chart, typically we put the CEO, right? Well, in your case, it should be a branding statement. What is it in very few words that describes who you are? And then coming off of that branding statement will be branches that all feed off of that overall branding statement. So it could be that you're a very, you're a marketer that drives revenue. Okay. And a lot of marketers are not big revenue drivers, but in the digital age today, absolutely. And then you can talk about, 3 or 4 things that play off of that. I drive revenue through, website optimization, through, digital marketing campaigns and lead generation, through things that I do directly with customers and clients and the sales organization, whatever those might be. But this is the kind of way that you want to address that so that people can get a real quick view of what you are and what you represent, but most importantly, what value you bring. And this is why the value proposition summary in a resume and in a LinkedIn profile is so important. Here's a question that was emailed into me. I recently signed it's about open to work. Okay, and the question here is, I recently resigned from my company, and I've got to change my profile or LinkedIn profile or my resume. What's your feeling about, when do you need to do that? It's really a personal choice. The one thing that can be very harmful to getting profile views on your LinkedIn profile is if you have an end date and not something that shows your present position or what you're presently doing. So, for example, people that have been, let go from a company, they don't always, change their LinkedIn profile immediately. There's, I think there's a bit of a grace period. Again, just my perspective on this. So, there could be a month or 2 where you go, with the company that you were working for. But when the time comes to update your profile, and in particular, your LinkedIn profile, you don't want to have it end at, I worked at company XYZ from 2010 to 2024. You want to have a new position, and your new position is that you're looking for new career opportunities. or it might be that I'm doing freelance work, or that I'm open to project work, but looking for a full-time opportunity. And that should then say from 2024 to present, because the LinkedIn algorithm can oftentimes eliminate people that don't have something to present, because it immediately tells them that you're out of work. And a lot of companies don't necessarily want to have those people as a high priority, okay? And I'm just being very honest with all of you. So I would suggest that, if it's time for you to now show that you've ended your last job, okay, whether it was in January or May, you should go ahead and put in a new job for yourself. And that is, that you're looking and pursuing new career opportunities. Let's see, here's a question that came in. Let's see. Okay, good. Is a good piece of input. For finding email addresses, this individual has used another website called Clearbit Connect. Okay, and it's Clearbit Connect. Okay, it's clearbit.com. We'll get you there. We'll do much like what I'm sure Hunter.io does. Okay. There's a statement here about working with contingent search firms. Yes, contingent search firms are oftentimes individuals who are looking to pitch people to a company, but they have absolutely no influence with that firm in cases. They may not have a prior relationship. So you always want to make sure that if you are working with a search firm, one of the first questions you want to ask them is, are you retained or are you contingent? Here's another question that was sent in. Should my resume and LinkedIn profile be identical to one another? Well, the content should be the same. So all the bullet points that you have in your resume, in my mind, should appear in your LinkedIn profile. But the big difference between the two is that a resume is built on the concept of less is more. Okay, how do I say all the right things in the fewest words possible? This is copywriting, right? But the LinkedIn profile, in my mind, is much more about more is more, because search engine optimization has a big play here. We've got hiring managers and recruiters that are going into the back end of LinkedIn. They're looking for individuals who have in their backgrounds, in their write-ups, in their profiles, the keywords associated with the most important skills. So you want to make sure that you have a lot of those keywords, and it's easy to figure out what they are by just looking at job descriptions that you typically are interested in. And make sure that you're repeating those keywords over and over again throughout your profile. You wouldn't necessarily do that in a resume, but in a LinkedIn profile, you are given a lot of leeway when it comes to this. And people are going into the back end, and every resume, or rather every profile that they're looking at, is getting a score based on the number of direct hits. When they put in the following 7 key skills, are you satisfying 6 of those 7 or all 7? And that's how they're going to prioritize the folks that they eventually are going to interview. So let's see here. Here's another question that I had actually emailed into me. I've been interviewing with a company for the past 6 weeks. They've now asked for 3 references. Does that mean that they're going to make me a job offer? Traditionally, yes. There's no reason for anybody to be asking you for references unless they plan to make you an offer. And my feeling is, and I have seen some companies that have asked for references without yet being in a position where they wanted to make an offer. But any company that is really conscious about asking people for references is a big deal. But the important step that you want to make sure you do is that before you give the names and contacts of the references that you're going to share with the hiring company, have a conversation with every one of those references in advance. Let them know what the job's about. Let them know what sorts of things you might want them to stress when they get a phone call from that hiring company, because the references can be great validators. Okay, and everybody who's a reference of yours should have nothing but great things to say about you. But I think that you got to prep these people a bit, and they should be able to bring back to life some of the stories and achievements that you encountered with them when they were working with you. So here's another question that came in: is ghosting a common practice? I have been ghosted several times by recruiters, and it's very frustrating. Yes, and yes, it's very frustrating, no doubt. Very inappropriate, but it happens a lot. Okay, so I don't want anybody who has been ghosted to think that they're being singled out. There's a couple reasons why it happens. One is that the overwhelming number of resumes that get sent into every job. And for good jobs, there typically are going to be 100 or more, respondents. So they don't have the time to send out response to everybody. But my feeling, and you'll see this in the 90-minute recording I did on how to beat ghosting, is if you've only had one interview, then I don't think that the company owes you an explanation as to why they did or in this case maybe didn't move you on in the process. But if you've invested at least 2 rounds, okay, which means you probably had a phone screen, and the next round probably was with the hiring manager and maybe even some other people. But if you've invested 2 rounds, my feeling is the company owes you an answer to simply say, you know what, we've decided to move in another direction. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with you going back to the hiring manager. Okay, because the two of you, know what's at stake here, and asking them for some candid feedback. You know what? It's been 3 weeks since we last talked. I remain very interested in the position, but I haven't heard anything, and was wondering if I'm still in the running. Okay, or if you decided to move in another direction, and let them tell you. It may be that it's taking a lot more time for them. Okay, it's one of the most frustrating things in the job search is that the time it takes for companies to make a hire, and there's almost nothing you can do to speed that up. So ghosting, yes, it happens, but don't feel you're ghosted if all you've done is invested, an online ad response. So please, don't take it personally either. I would make a comment about email cover letters. And I see a lot of questions typically coming in on this. They want to know whether or not they should be, sending them. Email cover letters are a fantastic way to separate yourself from all the other candidates. Recent studies show that over 80% of hiring managers want to see cover letters because they want to see how you communicate. What's your writing style? How persuasive are you? And of course, a cover letter should always have some of the stories, and just a few, that connect your background and achievements to the key requirements of the job. And you might just take 2 or 3 or 4 as examples. Okay, they're also very easy to read, cover letters. Okay, a lot of recruiters will tell you that they don't read them because they're relying on an applicant tracking system to make some of those candidate choices for them. But hiring managers do like to see them. And I can tell you, there are a lot of job seekers that don't bother to write them. One of the things that, that I provide, through some of my coaching is, the ability to write highly tailored custom cover letters in less than 10 minutes. So that you build up a library of responses that you can then tap into and plug and play. Because speed is important when it comes to this. So if any of you want to look into the research, Resume Labs is a company. They found that 83% of hiring managers actually want to see cover letters and do take more action with people that submit those. Do you have any suggestions on how I can get more active on LinkedIn and draw more views to my profile? Well, there's a number of different ways that you can draw more activity to your profile, and you want to get profile views. And I've always felt that, if you're in an active job search, you want to get at least 5 views of your profile every day. Okay, so if you go to your home page, okay, the home icon on LinkedIn, you're going to be able to then click on that, and off on the left below your photograph, you'll see who's viewed your profile, and it's going to give you a number. You want that number to be, it's a rolling 90-day number, and you want that number to be at least 450 because that's what gets you 5 views a day. But the more important thing is what you do now that might be different than what you've done in the past. You should be connecting with people on LinkedIn constantly. Within NSE&G, it's real easy to do because the more connections you have, the more people you're going to be able to see when you start doing filtered searches to look for people in certain companies. Okay. You should be emailing companies that don't have advertised jobs. When they get an email from you, one of the things that many of those individuals do is they come back and check out your background. So they look at your LinkedIn profile. You should be, doing a lot of networking. That is a way for you to get into some companies, maybe through somebody who either works there or somebody who knows somebody who works there. And of course, you can do filtered searches on LinkedIn as a way to find who these people are and what they're currently doing. So, I absolutely, encourage you to leverage your network and email cover letters, because once you know the way in which to write them fast but very effective, it opens up the door in a way that a resume and a LinkedIn profile oftentimes cannot do. So here's another question that was emailed in. I've been interviewing with a company for the past, I got that one already. I've been interviewing with a company, and they've indicated to me that the next round of interviews is going to be a panel interview. Could be interviewing with 3 or 4 people simultaneously. Okay. Now panel interviews are not easy. And because you've got to be prepared for each of the different people that you're going to be getting questions from. So one thing that I always encourage folks to do in preparation for those is that you'll typically be given who the people are. Okay. It might be a person from finance, operations, marketing, and sales. Great. Well, they all have different agendas. Okay. And while the job description has been written, they each have different needs. But you want to step back from this and think, okay, what is it from finance? What would they want and need from the person moving into this role? What would the person in marketing want and need? What about the person in sales? Because you want to be able to, prepare some of the things that you've done in your past that might be valuable to somebody who's on the finance side, somebody who's on the operations side. So it takes a lot. It takes more preparation, no question, and it requires you to think fast on your feet. But if you put together enough stories on a cheat sheet, it can be a simple Excel spreadsheet. Put down different categories of people, whether, again, it's operations, finance, marketing, legal, and some of the stories alongside them that might be relevant to those individuals. Now you start to get that connectivity going between you and an audience that may be very, very wide in its personal interests. So I absolutely encourage you to do that kind of preparation and take advantage of Zoom, because you can record, your answers to questions and just team up with people. When you see the way you've responded to various questions, it may not be as fluent as you thought you were. But no better way than to record it on LinkedIn and play it back and then see what, how you're doing, because you may be a bit surprised. Here's another question that was emailed in. I've had a lot of phone interviews with HR departments, but never seem to get beyond the phone screen. What might I be doing wrong? Well, it's possible that you're responding to positions that you're not qualified for, or not qualified enough. It may be that you're overqualified, and we see that happening a lot. A lot of candidates are overqualified, and as a result, they do get eliminated. But what you want to do when you're on a phone screen, and just envision the person on the other end of that phone call has got a checkbox list of all the most important requirements. It might be 7, it might be 17. And so one thing you want to do is to get a sense for whether or not enough of the boxes have been checked to warrant you going on to the next stage in the process, which will likely be an interview with the hiring manager. So at some point during the interview, of course, the storytelling is going to serve you well with getting them to check the box for certain areas. But as you get toward the end of the interview, don't hesitate to ask, is there any topics or any questions that you wanted to ask that that we didn't have an opportunity to address? Because you might be on the border, right? And give them an opportunity to ask you one or two more questions, that could then take you over the threshold so you move on to the next stage. And at the end of the phone screen, I also would ask the question, is there any reason why you would not move me on to the next stage in the interview process? And let them answer it. Okay. I mean, this is a job you want. Okay. Let them tell you whether or not, that you are meeting, the requirements of the job. Again, it just gives you one last opportunity. I know a lot of folks might be afraid to put a question like that out there, But there's nothing wrong with doing that because you want to know. And the fact is that you owe you're owed an answer as to whether or not, you're somebody who they are going to seriously consider for moving on. Before we close it out, I just want to mention a couple quick things, a couple reminders to each of you. I do these about every 3 or 4 weeks. The next LinkedIn Live will be on Wednesday, June 5th. It'll again be about a half an hour session. I'll be talking about some actions that you can take that potentially change the game very significantly for you in your job search. If any of you are considering the possibility of working with a coach, please don't hesitate to send me an email at mgilbert@nsenginc.com. And know that this NSENG is a great resource for anybody who's in a job search. The membership is free. Join our LinkedIn group as well. Take a look at it. I get interviewed by a lot of radio, TV, and podcasters, and sharing a lot of information. It's all in the About section of the website. Check out the upcoming events and, of course, all the workshop and job search webinar recordings, as well as the coaching. So just know that you don't have to go through this alone. The job search can be a very lonely experience for some people, but the fact is, when you join organizations like this one and others, you can tap into people that can be very helpful to you, and they're willing to help. But you know what? You've got to ask for it, and that's one of my mantras for job seekers. That if you don't ask, it's hard to get. Got to ask for jobs. You got to ask for networking help. You got to ask for introductions. You got to interact with people who have the potential to help you, because there are so many people that have been through this, that can really empathize with your situation, and they're willing to lend a hand. So with that in mind, keep an eye on the website for a next upcoming event. I posted it last night out on LinkedIn, so go ahead and register for it. And again, with all these LinkedIn Lives, they all get recorded after the event is over, and you can always view what we've done today and with other areas of job search by just tapping into it. All the best to you.